worst Ratchet and Clank, in my opinion, would probably be Ratchet and Clank before the Nexus. Because this game it's literally just a Temple Run clone. There's nothing to it. It's very bad, very bland. Like, I probably don't even have a lot to say about it. That's the big issue with it compared to the other ones, is there's really not much to it, because, like, you're just moving on, like, a rail. Like, as you can see him moving right there, you're not controlling him, of course, it's just moving, because it's one of those phone games, and, you know, I mean, it's nice that they incorporated the guns where you shoot them, but there's literally no upgrading in it. Like, there's not much to it. It really just feels like Ratchet and Clank 1 or, you know, something basic, because you're not really doing much with it, which honestly makes it very subpar in comparison to the other ones, in my opinion, you know. And what really sucks is this was the last game before the reboot, so this is all we got in between the 3-year gap between Nexus and the new game, which is kind of crap. It makes sense why it was removed from the later iPhone stores, because honestly, this is probably the only Ratchet and Clank that I just legitimately think is a shitty game, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But yeah, that's why it's low on the list. The worst Ratchet and Clank game is Ratchet and Clank Going Mobile. This game is not bad for what it is, you know, because it was on an old Java phone. But as a game by itself, it's not really that much to talk about, you know? Like, it's okay for a Java game, but, like, by itself, I wouldn't really call it much of anything. Because it's just like your basic 2D shooter. You just, you know, swipe your wrench around, you do all that. And it's pretty short, too, you know? Like, if you put it up against all the other ones, it is pretty subpar. It is better, however, than before the Nexus, because unlike that one, you weren't, you know, like, on rails and just shooting stuff. With this one, what's really interesting about it for a phone game is you're actually doing stuff, you know? You're actually walking around, like, you know, slashing stuff with your wrench. And, you know, they really tried to make it like a Ratchet and Clank game, and for that, I gotta give them, you know, all the kudos for a very solid effort. Anyways, that's why it's number 2 on the, you know, worst list. So now on the list, we're kind of at a point where the games aren't necessarily bad, but they're okay. Like, we're kind of in the okay section of Ratchet games. Because this game's not bad, in my opinion, but it does feel very gimmicky compared to the other ones. Like, my main issue with Secret Agent Clank specifically is all the little mini-games it has. And yeah, you have your, you know, arenas where you play as Ratchet, which are pretty good, honestly. They're basically just size matters. But the problem with it is, like, a lot of the stuff in the game is just Clank mini-games. You know, like, the Gadgetbots are okay, the sneaking with Clank is pretty good. But in my opinion, the Quark missions and the minigames in it really put the game down for me, because, well, not all of them are bad. A lot of them are just, you know, they're very gimmicky, like one-timey. Like, you do it once and that's it. Like, you know, for the sake of variety, which can be good. But as we've learned from some games, variety can definitely be too much if you put, you know, too many things in one game. And it really feels like Secret Agent Clank was desperately trying to be the big variety game when, yeah, it really couldn't. It just wasn't made to be a variety game. But yeah, that's why I think Clank is the number 3 worst. Not a bad game by the stretch of the imagination, but definitely, compared to the other ones, it does feel less like it's paying attention to the shooting and stuff, which is what it's meant to do. And it wasn't even really paying much attention to the sneaking either. You know, it just really focused on minigames. The next game on the list is Ratchet and Clank All for One. Now, my main problem with All for One is not that it's a bad game on its own, but it's not really all that great of a Ratchet and Clank game. And I'll give you my reasons. As a multiplayer game, it's very fun. And I had so much fun with friends just playing it, you know, and going through the campaign. But one big thing that they've taken out of this game is upgrading. which I never really understood, because that's something they could have easily added even with the multiplayer, you know? And yeah, you could buy the upgrades like Ratchet 1 and, you know, challenge mode. Where's the fun in that, you know? Imagine how nice it would have been, you know, to play with your friends in multiplayer and, you know, upgrade through experience. And what also felt lacking is there wasn't really a lot of, you know, whatchamacallit. Well, there was a lot of planets, but there wasn't a lot of, I don't know, there wasn't a lot of story to it, and a lot of the weapons felt samey, you know what I mean? Like, they had a few new ones, but it just, I don't know, a lot of them were just the same to me. And it was the first Ratchet and Clank where the humor started to get very kiddie, you know, and it wasn't the worst, but it could have been a lot better, in my opinion. That's just what I think about, like, the story and everything. The gameplay is still okay, but sometimes it's a little hard to see where you're going when the, you know, thing's in the top-down position. Or, what do you call it? Like, it's kind of like a non-camera thing where you gotta, like, keep all the characters together. Which, it's understandable because it's a 4-player game, but it still hurts it, in my opinion. That's the main reason why I think it's, you know, it's, you know, up here on the worst list, in my opinion. Let's get to the next game. The next game on my list is Ratchet and Clank Size Matters. A game which, you know, still has the same basic Ratchet and Clank gameplay, but just does it a bit worse. It's so stiff, the way Ratchet plays, specifically in this one, that, like, it's kind of hard to explain it, but, like, just the way he moves. Like, he's doing the same thing he does in every other game, but, like, it just feels so stiff with everything. Like, throwing your wrench, swinging your wrench, jumping, moving. It just, I don't know, something about it just feels really odd. The weapon selection's not too bad, though. They are new weapons that you haven't really seen in other ones. They have a, you know, few old ones, like the Glove of Doom and the Suck Cannon, but aside from that, they didn't really bring back any older ones. They all tend to be new. I personally enjoyed some of the Clank Arena things. Not all of them, but I like the little Gadgetbot puzzle they had. The giant Clank things were pretty okay. But I think what threw it off for me was the length of it, and just how underwhelming the gameplay and the story kind of felt. At least in my opinion, it just didn't hold up, really. The whole, you know... Spoiler alert, by the way, I probably should note that in the description, that little girl, you know, little girl you meet, she says, I need you to go, you know, do this thing for me because I'm doing a news report. And then, uh-oh, little girl's evil, plot twist. And then, uh-oh, later, little girl's working for the Bug Man. That's no good. It just really felt, you know, underwhelming. And I imagine that's probably what it was meant to be, since it was a PSP launch title and everything. And yeah, that's why I'd say it's in the top 4 worst. Let's get on to the next one. Ratchet and Clank Full Frontal Assault. A game that had some really interesting mechanics that they tried to do, but really didn't utilize it too much to its full potential, in my opinion. It was really neat that they tried the whole, you know, tower defense sort of gameplay, but the maps felt very small, and the game itself was very small. It was like 5 planets, which I know was kind of meant to be that, but, like, some of my critiques of a few of these games are the fact that they kind of made it short, you know? And Full Frontal Assault would be one of those games. Again, the story was a bit underwhelming. It was, you know, big nerd man comes back from going commando. He's like, hey, I'm evil, I'm gonna destroy you all. And now you gotta stop him. And then there's, like, one twist with the plumber, but that's about it. Overall, I do enjoy the unique mechanics of building defenses and everything and going to all these bases. But I wish, like, that they didn't end it so quickly. Like, there's a point where you have to go back to one planet to, you know, do the snowstorm thing. It would have been neat if, like, maybe there was a way to go back to the other ones and, like, stop some other sort of storm. That way, maybe there's, like, a little change to gameplay while also letting you go back to said world. But overall, it wasn't too bad for what it was. You know, it really was just a tower defense game that was trying out new mechanics. You still had your weapons. One big thing that puts it over All for One is that you upgrade your weapons, which is very nice. I really love my upgrading weapons, which certain game didn't have. And, you know, Zurgo was, B-grade, what would you call it, like a D-grade villain, because he just said the funnies, and that was it. And then the ending was really underwhelming. I don't know, it just felt like not much was happening, you know? And I guess that's what it was meant to be. It was a calm before the storm that was going to be into the Nexus. But anyways, overall, a pretty good game, but didn't really live up to its full potential as a big open area, you know, battle arena tower defense game. The next game on our list is Ratchet and Clank Future Quest for Booty, which is kind of more of a DLC than a new game, if anything. But I decided to add it to the list anyway, since Insomniac basically considered it, a separate game. For what it was worth, it, basically It basically played like Tools of Destruction, but it felt very short. The game was more focused on puzzles rather than combat, so in a lot of sections you won't really be fighting people. It'll be more of, you're trying to, like, put these little light bugs in a certain spot so you can see where you're going, or, you gotta turn the wind turbines, stuff like that. One big thing that they made use of was the wrench, which would come into effect in a game that is very high up on the list, in my opinion. It brought, like, the beginnings of something that'll be really good, and kept a lot of the good stuff from the previous game, but it really just was too short. Like, that's the only thing that has it this low on the list. If it was longer, it would probably be up on the list, in my opinion, but just for its short length, I can't put it any higher, because, like, the other games kind of bring you more content and more things for you to do. But overall, a good game, but too short for its own good. So, I'll probably have some people who either say I put it way too low on the list, or I put it too high on the list. I, for one, think that this game is somewhere in the middle, because the gameplay's fine, it's, for what it was, it has improved a lot in the Ratchet and Clank gameplay, but the story was just so overwhelming to me, and the characters were so overwhelming, and it felt like Ratchet and Clank became a shell of their former selves in this game. And it played well. A lot of the weapons were nice and upgradable. One of the other problems, too, is that the weapon upgrading was, the weapons were samey. They only brought back two new weapons, and the rest were basically the same weapons, sadly. Which kind of sucked, because, you'd want to see them bring back, some old weapons, but overall you want new weapons, too. And they didn't even bring back weapons from the first game, which, it's a remake. That's what you'd think they'd do, right? It was less of weapons from the first game, more of, like, an all-star cast of weapons from all the games, and a lot of them were basically just games from the Future series, which doesn't really make sense when they're trying to remake the PS2 one, where they didn't sell those kind of weapons in that vendor. The gameplay was solid, a lot of the planets were nice too, though, and I'll give it that, it looks really good. It's probably one of the best looking Ratchet and Clank games, of course, because it's the newest, at least up until Rift Apart. So I'll give it that, it's a looker, but it's kind of an expected looker. But it just felt underwhelming, like, they don't even have as many planets as the first game had, which, that doesn't make any sense. If you're remaking a game, you want to have all the planets from it, right? But yeah, that's why I have it a bit in the middle on the list. The next game will be kind of interesting, because these two games both kind of fit in the middle point for me. Yeah, you all kind of expected it when I mentioned in the previous game that this was also in the middle point. And it's because this game has so much charm to it, and a lot of character. The levels have a really good atmosphere, and also there's more levels than the last one. The only place where this would fall flat compared to the 2016 one is in the gameplay department. But, like, everything else is better. The music, the characters, the story, the weapon selection's good. Even though the gameplay's not as good, you have a better variety of weapons, there's a better variety of gadgets, there's more instances when you can play as, there's Giant Clank, which wasn't in the new one either. And just compared to the other one, which felt bare bones, this one had a lot more atmosphere, levels, and content, just in general. And the sad thing is, I don't have a lot more to say about it. I guess, if we're going past, comparing it to 2016, I would probably say, what really makes this one special is, of course, it's the birth of a series, You obviously have the part where Clank meets Ratchet, and, they get into a bit of scuffles, which a lot of people don't like the part where Ratchet and Clank are arguing in the game. But I think it's good, because it kind of shows that, they didn't really start off as friends. They both had their own goals, and they clashed during it. The nice thing about the game in the end is that they both learned that, hey, you're actually a cool dude. And I think that's pretty good. I like that you kind of get that dynamic where they start off as enemies, but as they're going on through their adventures, they become friends. You don't really get that kind of chemistry in the new game, where in the new game, it's more like, I am Clank, and this is Ratchet, which is, of course, the best chemistry, I would say. The next game on our list is Ratchet and Clank Into the Nexus, which is probably the best game in, the recent Ratchet sort of game timeline from 2010. Mainly because it kept the old gameplay from the other ones, or I guess you could say they brought it back. They didn't have, forced tower defense stuff or multiplayer stuff. It was just back to the old stuff with a little bit of a twist. It had, a lot of more of a dark theme compared to the other ones. They made use of rift tethers and stuff like that. It was very interesting. So I didn't really feel like, they were out, overusing stuff, because they added new things to it, rather than just completely keeping the old mechanic, while also keeping a lot of the old stuff that we wanted. It was a very good mix of that. My issue personally, though, is, like with Quest for Booty, it was a bit short. Not as short as Quest for Booty, but still a little bit of an underwhelming adventure in comparison. The story was really good, by the way, too. It was a good send-off to the Future series, which I imagine is what it was trying to be. It's not officially called a Future game, but it really does feel like it's trying to tie up the loose ends of that series, which it really did. You didn't really see a lot of the characters too much, but, it was nice when you got to see them, like when Cork showed up and Kronk and Zephyr showed up before they, died. But overall, a very good game. I'd recommend it for anybody who wants to get the old stuff, but also some interesting new mechanics, like the Clank missions and the which are basically like Clank going in another dimension, and the rift tethers and all that. The next game on our list, and now we're at the point where basically, like I said, the 2016 the new game was the middle point. I'd say, from this is the good game point. Into the Nexus and this, right? The games after this are really good, but these two games are good, if that makes sense. So we're at the, good Ratchet and Clanks, or I'd say great, almost. This is very close to it, because what this game did is it was able to kind of act as a spin-off, but it kept a lot of the same basic weapon upgrade mechanics, because Insomniac thought, hey, the arenas are pretty popular, let's take out a lot of the platforming and make it mostly third-person shooting. And you'd think, even though a lot of what Ratchet and Clank is a third-person shooter, that would ruin it, but it really doesn't. Deadlocked is a very interesting game, and, something that I always enjoy playing. I love the whole idea of, fighting in a gladiator arena, and, basically it's the arenas. You choose a bunch of challenges and then you do them, The game's a lot darker, The humor's very dark, too. I like the story. It's probably, maybe aside from the Future series, the best story Ratchet and Clank has had, because, like, there's a lot of slander of Ratchet, and it kind of has, like, a hidden meaning into it, you know what I mean? About, like, media slander against people, which is not really something I've seen any other Ratchet and Clank game do. It's very interesting in that way, but also the length is good. It's not as big as the other Ratchets, like the PS2 ones, but it's a very decently length game. Sadly, you don't see a lot of, like, the characters you know, but that's expected, and, you know, of course, that doesn't really deduct points from it, because there's so many new characters in it, like, you know, the robots that help you, which are very useful. I'd say that's a big thing that boosted it up, because they'll actually help you throughout the game. Like, if you need a grind rail, they'll put down a grind rail for you, for example, or like a hacker, they'll hack stuff too. There's also a 2-player mode, which is very fun. I haven't used it too much, but if you enjoy that, that's something to check out, definitely. The weapon list is shorter, though. I should probably note that. But what they did in return is you get to level them up to level 99, which is wild, you know, and you get to add, like, extra little mods to it, so if you want to, like, a fire mod to your weapons, you can add that, or if you want a poison mod to it, you can add that. It's very interesting in that way, and they add a lot of stuff that you don't really see in other Ratchets. Now, before I do this, I know that this is a very, very unpopular opinion to have, but Ratchet and Clank Up Your Arsenal is only my 4th favorite Ratchet and Clank game. At least, like, as of recently, after taking a harder look at all of them. And I'd say my main reason for that is not that it's a bad game, it's one of the great Ratchets. That's why I mentioned the rest of these games being amazing. You know, these are like the top 4 golden Ratchets that you want to stand by. But, compared to the other 3 that I'm going to do later, this one just feels, I don't know, underwhelming. It doesn't feel like there's a lot to it, really, compared to the other ones. The story is, you know, it's all over the place. There's not really, like, a consistency to it. The levels, while still good, are very linear. You don't have those same pathways that you'd see in Ratchet and Clank 1. You know what I mean? And it just, I don't know. It just wasn't as good, in my opinion, or focused as Going Commando or the first one, or, well, it's better than the first one because of the gameplay, for sure. But it wasn't as focused as that, if that makes any sense. It has about the same amount of plants as 1, so you still have the same sort of length. The place where it really does well, though, is the weapon upgrades. It was the first game to let you upgrade to level 5, which is very nice, you know? It was nice seeing all the Q-Force people back, which are a lot of cool characters, too. My major issue with it was, I'm going to get into spoiler territory, by the way, is that it didn't really feel like they had a consistent story that they were going with, you know? Like, first Cork dies, and then he randomly comes back, you know, betraying people, and then the ending. The ending, in my opinion, was a little bit underwhelming. There could have been a lot more to it, because, like, you basically just defeat Nefarious, and then it's like, oh, hey, look, there's a movie. That's basically it, you know? After that, you don't really get much else. And honestly, in my opinion, there's not as many weapons as there are in Going Commando. It really doesn't have as many. And a lot of them are just reused weapons. Which is not a big deal, because I know that they have the, you know, saved weapons slot thing where you can get the Going Commando ones. Which is good. Here's one thing they did do better, though. The weapons you do get back from the previous game, you can actually upgrade those, which is something Going Commando didn't do. That would be one of the improvements I'd say it has. But like I said, the one thing that killed it for me again was the fact that the story was more underwhelming. I don't know, yeah. That's really all I gotta say. Like, the gameplay was fine. The levels were just linear. Oh, here's some things that I have to say is kind of eh. The Galactic Ranger missions and the Corkvid comics, in my opinion, were probably what would push it down to. and just various other things. It felt more gimmicky than 2, you know? And that's kind of the issue a lot of third games have, I've noticed. While for the most part I usually prefer the third game in a series, this one, just in my opinion, you know, had like too many extra gimmicky things like that compared to 2, which, aside from like maybe a few races and ship mini games, mainly stayed focused on the platforming and shooting, unlike 3, which again doesn't like do it too much more, but it's enough to where I say, yeah, 2's honestly a better game. Yes, it is true. I'm afraid it's the end of the PS2 Ratchets list now that we're officially at, you know, going commando. And the main reason for that is that the future series does some things better that I'm going to mention later, that these ones don't have, in my opinion. Now, again, like I said with the weapon upgrading and a few other things, Going Commando isn't as good as 3, you know? Because you can't upgrade the ones from the first game. But in a lot of other ways, I do appreciate Going Commando more. Like I said, it stays more consistent with the gameplay, unlike Up Your Arsenal. There's more planets to go to, I believe. I think it's like 20 compared to like 18. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I remember. That doesn't like make the game automatically worse, but you know, maybe deducts it a little bit for me. You don't have a lot of like Cork Vig comics to do. I prefer the arenas in this one, even though 3 had the little battle course. This one just was kind of like straightforward with the arenas. I liked a lot of the bosses better. The weapon selection was more interesting to me. Because, like, honestly, Gadgetbots are cool, but I prefer the Synthenoid, you know what I mean? It overall was just a better weapon, personally. And, you know, I mean, why do you think they brought that back, like, with the Mr. Zircon, rather than some other version of the Glove of Doom, right? But, like, just all the weapons were good. The story was great. I loved all the twists in it, you know? And I really felt like you were, like, achieving some kind of goal compared to 3. The gameplay's basically the same, though, I'll give it that. You know, Ratchet and Clank, the gameplay doesn't usually change. What else is there that I could say? Like, I think it did better. Oh, yeah, the gadgets. So, the swing shot, while it was also in 3, like, it also had the dynamo and all that, a thing that they have in this compared to 3, which I didn't mention in that part, which is worth mentioning now, is that this had the grind rail, which 3 removed. For some reason, I never thought about that until, like, years later. I was like, wait, 3 never really had a grind rail, did it? You know? Going Commando still had those in various parts of the game. And I just always wondered why that was taken out of 3, because that was a really interesting part of the first 2 games, in my opinion, and the later games I'm going to mention. So it's good that they brought it back, because it's a fun little distraction that adds to it, you know? What else would I say? Yeah, I guess that's about it. Gadgets, the, you know, story and all that was better. Music was a bit more memorable, in my opinion, compared to 3, also. And yeah, there we go. That's basically everything at that point. But yeah, now we're gonna get to the top 2 games. You knew it was coming. The next game on our list is Ratchet and Clank Future Tools of Destruction, the second best Ratchet and Clank game in my personal opinion. And you all will say, oh, it's probably because of the graphics, right? No, not really. While the graphics are better, of course, because it's next gen, which is expected, the weapon selection is better. There's, like, more of a variety of weapons. A couple of the weapons that I really enjoyed, like the Groovatron and Mr. Zircon, you know, first came in this game, so it was nice to, you know, finally see them show up. The different enemies were really interesting. I liked all the planets. The music was really good in this one. I wouldn't say it's better than the old ones, but it still kind of caught up with it for me, you know what I mean? Like, it still had that good sound to it. The story department is what was really improved, because, unlike the other ones, this one is like an interconnected story, so the story was so good that, it had to be, like, kind of moved on to another game, you know? And you could say that probably deducts, and I suppose it does a little bit, because, you know, nobody likes a cliffhanger. But the game itself had a really good story because it's about Ratchet figuring out about his race and what happened to it. And all in all, it's very good. The gadgets themselves are pretty good. I like the decryptor and the the little flight thing. I thought that was pretty fun. One thing to note for anybody that complains about Z-axis controls, you can remove it, so I'm not really going to count that. I know some people probably would, but like to me, if there's an option to not have it, I don't see an issue with it. Because some people might like it, so it's good that they give you like the choice of doing it. But overall, it's a very interesting game. The weapons are good aside from the tornado one, which I think is like the only thing that needs a Z-axis. The grind rails that I mentioned in Going Commando are back, which is nice. There was one feature I forgot to mention. There's like this thing, right, where you can collect raritanium now. And with the collected raritanium, you can use that to upgrade your weapons. And not like experience upgrades. I mean, like, you can go in the vendor and you can buy like little mods and extra stuff to it, which is really nice. And it kind of brought back, didn't bring back, but it brought like in some more RPG type elements that, you don't usually see in games like this. Because like this had the upgrading, which, is kind of RPG, which is probably like the only thing from it had. The upgrading is also another thing, because it's like an upgrade tree, so basically you'd upgrade it, right? And then you get like another upgrade in the chain. I like that a lot, because, now it gives you a reason to collect more than just bolts, in my opinion. I think that's about it. That's all the reasons why I thought Tools of Destruction was my second favorite. Ratchet and Clank game, and probably my favorite game as a whole, Ratchet and Clank Future Kraken Time is number 1 on this list. And for one reason, it basically just improves on everything. And I mean literally everything in every single Ratchet and Clank game. With all the critiques I have, I almost have no critiques of anything in this game. It's crazy. It improves on so many things. The wrench, just to start off, is way improved. Instead of you having to crouch and spin the wrench, you just press the button and he just holds it out for you to throw it. The wrench tether that I mentioned when I was talking about Quest for Booty is put into full play in this game, which, you don't really see like a lot of use of it in that one. Well, you do, but this one makes a lot more use of it because it's a bigger game. The weapon selection is really good. You could finally upgrade weapons like Mr. Zircon and the Groovatron. It's one of the few games that has a fair mix of weapons from the previous game and new weapons. So you don't feel left out from weapons that you really enjoyed before, but you also get a very new selection of weapons that I personally liked a lot. Again, like, something to improve. The Ratchet gameplay, not just with the wrench was improved, but the hover boots are really fun and satisfying to use. And it was a pretty good replacement for Clank, at least, for the points when you didn't have them. Because, like, the hover boots kind of acted as a little hover thing that would replace Clank. So, basically, like, when you jump, it just hovers down. But also with the hover boots, you can use it to boost, do jumps, crazy trick things. It was very interesting, and it had a lot of neat platforming moments to it. And I didn't forget the Clank gameplay, because the Clank gameplay is really good. What they improved on it is the fact that you don't really need the little robots or the Zoni to help you anymore. Now you're just, you can just play as Clank and do your own thing. They have very neat puzzles with the clone Clanks that I've never really seen any other game try up until that point. At least in the Ratchet series, because basically you can clone your Clank, and you do something, right? Like, say, like, you push a button, right? That would open a door. Now that clone is doing it, you can reset time, do another recording, and push that same exact button that, said clone pushed. And that was really nice. The arena's very good in this one, too, because not only do you get an arena, but you get an optional. I say optional because it's optional, unlike the vid comics, where you can actually do a thing called My Blaster Runs Hot, which is a very interesting minigame. The big thing about this one is, while the planets are shorter, which, kind of stinks, there's a replacement for the fact that the planets are short. And that's the fact that there's a bunch of moons in each sector that you can go to, basically. And these moons act as kind of a replacement for the mix that you don't really get in a Kraken time. Like, you know, like the amount of planets you don't get. You can also explore space and do jobs for people. So you got more than just the main campaign to do. Or, you know, crystal collecting. It really feels like you're in a big open area. And the main reason you go to these moons, since they're not like a main story thing, is to collect zonies. So sometimes they'll lock you out of going to a certain planet because you need a ship upgrade from the zonies. So, you know, the moons aren't necessarily optional either, so you're still doing them. But I would recommend, like, if you want to get the full experience of the game, I would explore every moon, because they're all very fun, and they have a lot of interesting platforming challenges to it. Yeah, I talk so much about how great this game is that, you know, I kind of lost my breath a little bit. But yeah, that's why I think it's the best Ratchet and Clank. Yeah, thank you all for listening to my video. I hope that you all have a good day, and I guess we'll see how ripped apart is going to be when we, you know, get to that point. See you guys in the next video, and I'm out. Peace.